Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Making Records with Eric Valentine. That's me. We got ourselves a result on a mix contest for this When the Levee Breaks, drum recreation thing. And thank you, everybody, for participating. A bunch of really amazing sounding stuff in there. The more this continues, the more I realize, we could definitely get closer with this. It was really cool to see some of you all's mix choices on this, and inspired me in a bunch of ways. So there's no when about it. I'm definitely going to revisit this thing. I'm going to try and record it one more time. And just seeing how other people have approached this, all the information that's come up in the discussions about it, we can get closer on this thing. And it's been super helpful to see how other people are approaching this. That will inspire some new ways for me to think about it. So thanks, always thank you everybody for participating and getting into all this geekery. This was super fun. Like I said, just great to hear all the different takes on this. And it was really very close. I think this one was interesting because, everybody's going for the same result, but everybody is also working with the same limitation, which is what I provided. And there's just a limit to how close this is really going to get. And so I think a lot of people sort of ran into that ceiling of how close could these recordings actually get to the original thing? And so, the final stuff was really quite close, So I had to choose somebody for each category. So I did my best to pick the one that I thought was the best. And I was mostly listening for just the character of the compression and just matching the EQ, y'all got it as close as it can get, and it came out cool. And then there's some honorable mentions in there, some other ones that I just thought were just really cool sounding. Well, even if they didn't sound as close to the original thing, they were just cool, And so I'll share those as well. So let's start with the first category, which is the Beyer M160 category. That, in theory, should be the version that is closer to what the original is. That's, apparently what they used on the original recording. And so the winner, I'm happy to announce, in this category is a wonderful person named Whim Muis. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. You didn't say your name in your video, so I couldn't confirm that, so hopefully I'm close there. But let's hear what they did. Check this out. So as always, we'll sort of refamiliarize our ears with the original. I think that's always good to do. This is what we're shooting for. So here's the original. Okay, and here's what Whim came up with. It's real close. I thought, particularly the character of the compression was quite close in this. And I think all of us were sort of battling a deficiency in the source material, was that, I think I mentioned this before in one of the follow-up videos along the way, is that I think my recording is lacking in just a density in the early reflections. And so I think it's compelled everybody to compress a little harder to try and pull that stuff out. But I think it's, under the circumstances, it's probably a good choice to try and get more density in the ambience from the compression, something that's actually lacking from, in the actual source material. And so I think he did a good job of that, of finding that balance of not having it sound wildly overcompressed, but thickening up the source material in a way that sort of matched closer to what the original thing was. And the EQ, I think, is very close. The original is so odd. I've talked about it so much. Just this weird phasing thing and all that stuff. And this one just felt like it had a similar amount of energy and presence in it, and just being back and forth. It just gave me a very similar sensation when I was listening to it. And so, I really chose these things by ear, just listening and just sort of experiencing how it felt. That was sort of the most important to me. And then after the fact, I would go and just kind of compare them in various ways to see what happened. And it was kind of interesting, to see what I ultimately chose. And so I have a plugin set up here, Pro Q4, so you can compare the spectral analysis, the spectrum analyzer response between these two sources. So check this out. So the white is Whim's version, and the red is the original. And so you can see a couple little differences here. So up here, Whim may have been a little aggressive with the roll-off. Unquestionably, that needed to happen. And the original one, the roll-off was maybe due to the tape machine, tape speed, some limitations in there that was rolling off the high end. I think everybody sort of recognized that and did some version of that. And this move was maybe just a little bit too aggressive. And then the only other difference that I really felt was in the low end, and you can see I actually sort of messed around with an EQ move here. The original, the low end is really focused not that low, it's not like a super deep sound, and it's ultimately really the combination of the two sides, the left and right sides. And the left side that has all the weird phasiness is really focused more in a range that I would consider to be like low mid-range and not like the low lows, And so that's the thing that I felt like this was a little shy, and you can see it a little bit here. And so, I ended up just experimenting a little bit to see if I could make the shape of the spectrum analyzers, match a little better, and see if that actually, sounded a little closer. And so here it is with the EQ. And then without. But man, it's really, really close. And it's for me, it's mostly like the feeling of it was really close. Maybe a move like this would bring it a little bit closer, but overall, it felt great. So let's check out Whim's video. He was nice enough to take the time to record something, share with us his space, where he's working, what he's using to work with to do this, and also went through and did a quick breakdown of how he created this mix. Let's check it out.
Hello, Eric. First of all, thanks for letting me be on the channel. I was really surprised when I saw your email that I won the mix contest. So thanks for the exposure. I hope it helps a bit. Anyway, let me show you really quick my setup. I'm at my kitchen table at the moment. I don't have a separate mixing room because I live in an apartment with my two children, and I really don't have the space at the moment. I hope in the future it will be a bit different, but for now, thanks to these, it works. These are the Hi-Fi Man HE1000, the planar magnetic headphones. They're fantastic. I mean, the detail on these things is the low end, everything is great. Just, you should try them out. It's fantastic to mix on. It's like listening to the best speakers in the world. Let me show you a little bit more of my setup, which is a bit of a mess right now, but okay. I have the HE1000 paired with the Hi-Fi Man DAC amp, which is great, just on USB-C. Then I have this little MIDI controller. Can I show it better? Okay. I'm not used to recording videos, so... Yeah. So this is the rock solid Micro 4K, just USB-C powered. I have this mapped to my favorite plugins, and it really improved my workflow. It's so much faster, so much more intuitive as well. Yeah, EQing some things, it's like EQing on a console. You can overdo it and really quickly just check your frequencies. It's great. And I just have this mapped to some other compressor plugins and stuff. Just, it's also nice to be able to turn 2 knobs at the same time, like on a distressor or something. And then, like last week, I bought this a PreSonus Fader Port 8, and thanks to Reaper, I abandoned Pro Tools a couple of years ago and started using Reaper. Somebody wrote a script that's called Resonus, and thanks to that, this pairs beautifully with Reaper. I thought I was just gonna use it for some automation and fader runs, but turns out it really helps improve the balance of my mixes. Just listen and touch some faders. It works so much better than a mouse and looking at the dB level on the screen. And also the send sound fader function for sending to effects. And you can also just select an effect return, press a button, and then you have the receives on fader. So you see everything that goes into that one reverb or whatever. So that also really helps rebalancing your effects receives. All right, and then I mix on a MacBook. Yeah, it's just these Apple Silicon things. They're really great. So enough of that little setup. Let's have a look at my Reaper session for when the Levee Breaks mix contest. Let's go take a look. I'm gonna bypass everything. Okay, first of all, I completely overprocessed this, but the goal was to get as close to the original as possible. So I tried it. So this was the dry recording. And the first thing I did was I added a Neve, a Lindell 80. Let's have a listen. Got some more volume out of it, boosted some high shelf. Got some low mids, got some lows, and some gentle compression on the fast setting. Next, the Kramer HLS, which is inspired by the old Helios consoles. It really worked. I did some stuff to... I think, I don't remember it very well anymore, but I think I added this after some other processing, and I just added it in the middle. So it's actually working against the Neve console a little bit, but okay. I also, something nice that Reaper has, I oversampled it. You can oversample any plugin natively in Reaper, which some of the old Waves plugins don't have. Now let's turn it on. So that's what that does. Another Neve channel. As I said, I think I added it afterwards when I was checking the original. So I added this. Got a little bit of aggression back into it. Okay. And this was actually the money maker. This was the... You'll hear it when I turn it on. It's also oversampled by 4 times, this one. And now... I use the mix knob. It's a little bit of a parallel compressor now, parallel processing, sorry, and I switched it to mid-side. Now, if I would use these tracks in a multi-track session with more drum tracks and more direct mics and whatnot, I would just stop processing here because I think this already sounds fantastic. That's great, but the goal was to get closer to the original, so I added a shitload of other processing. Okay, some tape to add some weight. You can really hear it in the low end. It's really nice. Alright, now this one, I added some low cut, some high cut, just to make sure that the delay didn't work too much on the hi-hat, and I added some saturation. And then I discovered Arturia plugins a couple months ago, and this one is actually on all my mixes. This is just a great compressor. I set it to dual mono. For the side chain, I removed some low end, and actually the limiter on this one really adds to that distortion on the transients. Listen. Beautiful compressor. Another Arturia plugin is this one. I actually switched it to mid-side as well, and on the mids I boosted some, I don't know how much is this, 1.5K, whatever. I boosted some 2.3K on the sides. I cut a little bit of top end, like it's on 30K, but as you can see here, it's really broad, so it's already starting at, I don't know, 10. And then I boosted a whole lot of 100 on the sides, but also paired with a high pass filter, so actually it's actually doing this right now. And on the mids it just stayed like that. Let's listen. Beautiful, very colorful EQ. I added this. It's not really doing a lot. I don't know. Okay, then the Pro Q to remove some dirty frequencies in the low mids and the lows. Let's turn it on. That helped. Then this also adds just a little bit of saturation and weight. One of the best Waves plugins. I use this a lot on kick and snare, especially the compender section. Now here it's turned off in the highs. Didn't really work that well, but just to add like a little bit more of saturation in this compender, let's hear it. Really nice. And then to finalize it, I use this one. I use it sometimes on mixes. You can't really use it in parallel, so it either works or it doesn't. But for here, it really polished everything a little bit, and it got closer to the original, I think. Let's see. And that was it. Thanks again for letting me on the channel. Thanks for the Unfair Child license. I can't wait to use it in my mixes, and I hope I can do another mix contest soon, because it was really fun to do. So thanks, and hope to talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Okay, so again, thank you, Whim, for taking the time to do that and sharing, your approach to this, man. Every time I do one of these, I learn new stuff and inspires things that I want to try. And in this case, I'm very curious about those headphones. Those look really cool. I actually hadn't heard of those before. I'm not a super headphone-centric person. Recently, right now in this location, I've been using these ridiculous Bose headphones. Clearly there could be a better choice than that. So I'm curious about those. I may investigate those. And then the other thing on this that, you get caught up in sort of chasing it a particular way. You have sort of a notion of how this happened, and I had that early on in this process, which has definitely changed at this point. And I only really did one stage of compression, and that was one of the things that struck me about this approach, was that there's multiple stages of compression, and having gone through, you know, all of the additional investigation in this, I really think there was definitely at least two stages of compression on this. There was an initial stage of compression that happened when in the recording, and then in the mixing, I think there was another stage of compression that was either on the whole mix that influenced the drum sound, or maybe just added to the drums in general, because the three different mix versions, the compression does feel a little bit different on each of them. So, so that's definitely something I'm going to experiment with if I dive into this again. That Whim definitely was all over with his approach. So, and then the other thing that I got reminded about was that Waves vinyl plugin. It's something I've used before. It does really cool stuff in the high end. I think you can hear that in Whim's version. And, you know, it's one of those things, like, there's so many plugins, and I get excited about new ones and forget about old ones, or ones that I haven't used recently, and just stop thinking about it. And that's one of those plugins that I think is, you know, I should continue to consider and use, and it reminded me about that. Okay, so let's look at a couple of the other things, and some of the other things that I looked at in this process. So one of the things, I set up a way to try and check and see if people really chased the comb filtering part of it. Quite a lot of these did not. They made no attempt to try and recreate that part of it, and I think Whim's was, you know, one of those. And you can, you know, having seen his whole approach, there was nothing in there that really addressed that aspect of this. Whether it was in there or not, when I listened to it, it felt, you know, felt like it had the same energy as the original one, even without the comb filtering. I don't know, that's just how I reacted to it. But it's one of the checks that I did. And so I set up, it's a stereo send on here, so it's going to bus 1 and 2. They're panned out, so the left side of any one of these mixes will go to bus 1, and then I set up a mono auxiliary that is only receiving bus 1, which will be the left side, and then I can have, you know, do a spectrum analysis of this, and so you can see on Whim's, you don't see that comb filtering pattern on the left side. That was one of the things that I was checking. Again, I sort of did all this after choosing what I like the best by ear, so I missed that. But, you know, if you look at the original, it's clearly visible, you know. It shows right up. But here, let's look at some of these other honorable mentions here. So this is another one, and let me make sure I get the name right here. Okay, so this is Jimmy Farmer. I thought this one also sounded really cool, and it maybe there's some comb filtering going on here, but if it is, it's certainly not as pronounced. Yeah, I don't know that there is. Yeah, I don't think there is. A similar thing happened here, maybe a little too aggressive in the high frequency roll off there. But man, really, this one also just felt great. You know, I think this one did feel a little darker than the original. Yeah, but you know, really well done. Okay, so then here's another one here. I'll switch this. Okay, so this is Aiden Swift. And so here's the overall spectrum matched really well the overall roll-off. And yeah, the overall spectral response looks really similar. For some reason, just A being by ear, it didn't give me the same sensation coming out of the speakers. And then if you look at the comb filtering, again, doesn't look like the comb filtering thing happened here. I think the comb filtering was very difficult to incorporate in a way, you know, the way it happens on the original is so bizarre that, I don't know, it's so anomalous that I think even on mine, when I was trying to incorporate that in mine, it just kind of made it sound less like the original. I still, it's kind of baffling to me how that much comb filtering was in there without it sounding so unnatural. Yeah, it's really, really peculiar on that original thing. Okay, so then we have another one here that I liked. So this is what it looks like. And I think this one got cool quality in the low end, did good there. And yeah, it feels really close. Yeah, there might be a hint of the comb filtering in here. Looks like there's a little bit of that going on. This is just, let me get the name. This is Declan White. Another really great offering. It really was tough to choose on this because I think, all these folks got really close, based on what they were working with. Okay, so then this next one. So this is Brian K. Fisher, and close with the overall spectrum. And this one definitely got the comb filtering going. So well done on that. But man, what a bunch of really great takes on this. I was using a bunch of old analog-y stuff, vintage, whatever stuff, trying to be true to that. And, I like the way mine turned out. It could definitely be better. And I think in another round of this, I'm gonna do better on this. But still, like all these ones that I'm presumably are mostly done in the box. I actually don't know for sure. The two winners that sent in videos entirely in the box, with the processing. And so the need for real, authentic analog stuff seems to be diminishing more and more over time as all of this in the box processing continues to get better. So let's move on to the iPhone version winner. So this is a really wonderful person from Australia named Aussie Harding. And so let's hear this version. So here is Aussie's iPhone version. We'll start with the original. Man, some good compression on this one. Yeah, I felt like just the impact of it, felt really similar to me, and overall EQing felt really good on this. So we can we'll look really quick at some of the other stuff. Here's the spectrum thing. See, I had a little EQ thing I was experimenting with. Yeah, and I think this one could have just used a tiny bit more low end overall, but really nice job shaping the high end. And I think there's a cutoff. You see this incredible brick wall cutoff. I think that's just from the iPhone recording, just based on the sample rate that the iPhone records at. It just lops it off, and so. But yeah, this one really felt quite close. But here's just a tiny bit of extra low end in there that I thought might help a little bit. And then again, here, there's nothing with comb filtering, but it's okay, I mean, it sounded good. I enjoyed it. It felt similar to the original. So, I'm kind of glad I wasn't over analyzing before listening. It's more interesting to me that way. But let's check out Aussie's video. He was nice enough to take time and record a bit about himself and how he approached mixing this. Let's check it out.
Hello everyone, my name's Aussie Harding from Melbourne, Australia. I am a music producer and mix engineer. I just wanted to firstly start off by saying thank you so much to Eric for having me on here, for doing this competition, for everything that he provides to the audio community. I've learned so much from him over the past few years, and so it's truly an honor, and I'm super grateful to be here with you today. So yeah, a little bit about myself. I grew up playing drums. I started playing drums in church when I was about 3 or 4 years old. And then when I was around 7, I started learning piano. That kind of became my main instrument. And then when I was around, I think like 10 or 11, I wanted to be in a rock band. So I picked up a guitar, learned how to play it, and started writing songs on the guitar. So that was kind of, how I grew up, always around music, always playing music. And it wasn't until recently, I'd say about 5 years ago, that I built a studio and I really started to dive into audio engineering and music producing and just really understanding how to create awesome sounding recordings, because it's obvious we have the technology now. You don't need a lot of gear to be able to get awesome sounding stuff. It's just about the knowledge and the skill to get there. So Eric's platform has been a huge help for me. I've learned so much from him over the last few years. So yeah, thanks again for that, Eric. As you can see, I'm not in my home studio right now. I'm actually traveling. I'm overseas, and so I'm in sort of a day room at our friend's place. But I do have some photos and videos of my home studio that I'd like to share with you. So I'll pull those up now. I'll just make sure you can see this properly. So here it is. This is probably a bit better of a photo. It's a pretty simple, small little studio, but I've actually treated it the same way that Eric treated his Topanga studio, where he put like insulation in all the walls. So I'll show you a little bit of that later. But yeah, you can see here I've got these Eve Audio monitors that I use as my main monitors. I run those with a cheap JBL sub, and then I've got NS10s as well, which I use predominantly for the mid-range, and I mix a lot on them these days because I find them helpful for being able to hear the mid-range and clean that up a lot more than these Eve monitors. There's another view of the studio. You can see there's the cheap JBL sub down there that I run. And this is a video that I took literally like a day before I flew out. So excuse the mess. I just thought I'm like, oh man, I should take a quick video in case I need to show anyone. And I'm glad I did, so I can show you that. So this is the studio space. It's really small, but yeah, it's cool. There's some guitars in there. And as you can see here, I actually got these pillows which I keep on the desk when I'm working on any kind of music mixing, anything, because I was finding that I was getting this weird cancellation around like 600 or 700 hertz, which was caused by reflections bouncing directly off this hard desk surface. So I put the pillows there and found that really helped to reduce that cancellation. I am running SonarWorks or Sound ID or whatever it's called. Now I think that helps to just get the room sounding a little bit tighter. So yeah, I am running that software. You can see the rest of the room here. I've got some mics set up, some guitars. It's a Vanguard V13 mic there. But yeah, that's the room. Overall, a cozy little experimental recording space. As I mentioned before, I kind of set it up a little bit like Eric did for the Topanga studio. So this one, I only had kind of room to do about 1 foot of insulation, but you can see I've built studs around all the walls and then just filled it with this rock wool insulation. And the other thing I wanted to show you is that this is actually a sort of tiny house, portable building that's made out of shipping container. So that's the outside of the studio before I started working on it. That's from the back there. So yeah, it's in a nice little spot, and that's normally where I work out of. As I said, I'm traveling overseas at the moment, so everything I'm doing is on headphones. So I'd love to share my mix session with you. Unfortunately, I do use Logic, so I couldn't just send Eric the Pro Tools session. But yeah, I'd love to walk through the session with you and show you how I went about mixing it. So, actually, before we do, I wanted to quickly mention this was all mixed in the box on headphones. And like I said, I'm traveling at the moment. And so one thing that I was really concerned about before I left home was that I knew I had some mixes getting sent to me that I would need to mix in the coming weeks. And I was like, man, I'm going to have to figure out a way of mixing on headphones. Like I've never done that before, but I've got no other option. And so I was looking around. I've just got these like cheap AKG K371 super cheap headphones. But yeah, I like them. They sound decent. But I was looking around at options for how I can look at getting them to sound more like speakers. So I found this cool plugin called Can Opener, which I will show you. So this is Can Opener here. And I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I just wanted to share this with you because this has literally saved my mixing. Like I would not have been able to mix in the way I have been on headphones. It basically, what it does is it adds crossfeed. You can choose how much, but it makes the speakers sound, it makes the headphones sound more like speakers, more like the sounds coming at you rather than at you from the front rather than directly from the sides on your head. And it also kind of cleans up, at least in my headphones, it cleans up the low mids a little bit. It kind of dips them out, and it almost does like a Pultec EQ chick where it boosts the lows a little bit and pulls out the low mids. And it just, it's helped me so much to be able to place things in the mix. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that's what I'm been monitoring through this whole time while I did this mix. Cool. So let's have a look at the mix. So as you can see, I've gone for the iPhone audio as my starting point for this mix. I'm sorry to say, Eric, I did try the M160s, but this iPhone audio just sounded, just the vibe of it sounded way closer to what the when the Levee Breaks original recording sounded like. And so yeah, I went for that. I know how hard you worked on the M160 placement and all that stuff, but yeah, this just felt cooler to me. So that's why I've chosen to go with the iPhone audio. So I'll play my mix and yeah, you can check out what it sounds like. Cool. You get the idea. I'll jump over into the mixer here. And what I'll do is I'll turn off the delay and the reverb, and I'll bypass all of the plugins. And so we'll just hear, I'm sure you've all heard this as well, but just to re-familiarize ourselves, this is the raw iPhone audio as Eric recorded it. So yeah, really cool. Crunchy sound. I like the way that the iPhone kind of compresses stuff and makes drums sound explosive. It's a really cool mic. So the first thing I did on it was a little bit of EQ, so lopping off a lot of the harsh high end that iPhone mic can kind of pick up sometimes, and then adding some mid-range around 3.1K and 1.3K. So what I'll do is I'll start with these bypassed, and then I'll add them in so you can see what they're doing. So this is bypassed. So you can hear that really makes it sound a lot more vintage and just not as iPhone-y. The next thing I'm doing is a little bit of mid-range EQ, looks like around 2 dB at 3.5K. So you can check out what that sounds like. Subtle, but just helping that mid-range to come through a little bit more. The next thing is this Soothe plugin, and I love this matte cymbals preset here. I find it really helps to tame the harshness in some of the overtones in cymbals, especially hi-hats and crashes and stuff. So yeah, I'll bypass this and then I'll engage it and we can check out what that's doing. I mean, it really just smooths out those hi-hat overtones. If you listen specifically for the hi-hat, listen again. I'll start with it bypassed and then I'll engage it. Really just helps with those ringy metallic kind of overtones that are in that hi-hat. So that's Soothe. Next plugin in the chain is the Pultec, just adding a little bit of 8K. And one thing about this that I noticed from the original, when the Levee Breaks recording, is that the high end, the presence was around 5 to 8K rather than sort of like 10K and above. So I was really trying to boost more in that 5 to 8K range, because that's where I felt like the presence in the drums was in that original recording. So a little bit of 8K here. I'll start with that off and then I'll put it in. So just adding a little bit more high frequency punch there. And then the final thing is this low pass filter around 13K. Again, just making it sound a bit more vintagey. So I'll start with that off. Yeah, it just helps it to sound a little bit more retro, a little bit more vintage. So this channel here is then getting sent to the drums bus, which shows up here. And as you can see, for the compression, it is the Unfairchild. I'm so thankful for this plugin. And I just wouldn't have been able to do this mix without this plugin. So thank you so much, Eric, for creating this and for all the work that you put into this. It's truly amazing. I'll start with this bypass and then I'll engage it. And yeah, this is a massive difference. Listen to this. Cool. So you can see I've got the input gain cranked all the way here. I love how this compresses, but also how it saturates and the rich harmonics that it adds to a signal. So yeah, I've cranked the input gain all the way up. Threshold is at 7.5. I'm on the variable 1 setting, which I find to be the most sort of aggressive compression, especially for stuff like drums, and relatively slow attack. And medium to fast-ish release. I kind of played around with that a little bit just to get it to pump nicely in time with the tempo of the song. I'm not using the DC threshold at all, and it looks like I am high-passing the sidechain at around 80 hertz just so it doesn't compress the kick drum too much. So yeah, that's the drum compression. The next plugin is this soft tube tape plugin, which is absolutely incredible. It's really subtle, but I've got it set all the way to the 3 3/4 IPS at the moment because I find that this really helps to smooth out the high end. It's almost like it rolls off a little bit of high end the more you turn it to the left here. So I have it on 3 3/4 IPS, and I'll start with this off, and then I'll engage it and just listen to what it does to the hi hat and to the high end. It's really cool. It really smooths out the high end and kind of stops the hi hat from jumping out so much in the mix. So yeah, I really like that. I thought it worked great for this. The next plugin is the RC20, and I use this a lot for this particular tube distortion that it has. I find it adds an awesome kind of body and richness in the low mids. So if you ever have like a thin sounding signal, this thing will fatten it up really nicely. So the mix is relatively low. And the distortion level is relatively low. And so I believe this also kind of rolls off the high end a little bit. So I'm also boosting a little bit of the highs here. I'll start with this off and then I'll engage it. Yeah, again, just making it sound a bit more vintagey, rolling off that top end a little bit more, just smoothing everything out with the tube distortion. And then little bit of EQ. This one is just adding the low end punch for the kick drum. So about 4.5 dB at 80 hertz. And like Eric mentions, this move is done after the compression, because if you try and do it before the compressor will end up just turning this back down again. So that's why it's after the compression. So I'll start with it off, and then I'll engage it. Yeah, so that's super important for just adding that low end back into the kick drum. And then the final thing on the drum bus here is just a little bit more mid-range, about 2 dB at 1K. So we can hear what that sounds like. I'll start with it off. Yeah, just bringing out that mid-range crunch a little bit more. Cool, so now we can look at the delay, and if I unmute that, that sounds like this. Cool, so the delay I'm using is just good old Echo Boy, which is pretty much the only delay I use for anything. It's just, yeah, an awesome delay. And I've got it set to the Telray preset here, but I did go in and just kind of tweak the EQ settings a little bit just to get the delay sitting exactly where I wanted it. So that's the delay I'm using. A little bit of EQ on the delay channel, just pulling out a little bit of mid-range resonance around 500 hertz, and boosting some mid-range around 2K. So I'll bypass this EQ in and out, and you can hear what this move is doing. Yeah, let's have a listen. Yeah, without the EQ, it's just kind of boxy sounding, and it's not really cutting through enough in the mid range when I was comparing it to the original when the Levee Breaks. So yeah, this move was just to kind of try and get it to cut through in the mid range a bit more. And then finally on the delay channel, there is just a little bit more mid range, a couple of dB at 700 hertz. That sounds like this. Again, just helping the snare drum to cut through a little bit more in that mid-range area. And then finally, so I should also just mention, like Eric said, he realized that this delay, the signal was getting sent to the delay before compression. So that's what's happening here. On the original audio track, it's being sent to the delay. There's the delay here, and then both of these are going to the drum bus here, which then gets this compression and all this other stuff. So that's an uncompressed signal being sent to the delay. Also, while we're on the topic of the delay, I'll just show you, if I open the automation, we can see that I'm actually turning down the hi-hat hits. So I found that without this automation, the hi-hat was just coming through the delay too much. So the only way I could figure it out was just to turn them down manually. So if we start from the start here, and I'll bypass the automation, and you can hear how the hi-hat just comes through too much in the delay. Let's have a listen to that. Yeah, so too much hi-hat coming through in the delay there. Once I turn the automation on, that hi-hat doesn't come through anywhere near as obnoxiously. So yeah, that automation move is important there. Cool. And so the final thing was, once this delay gets sent to the drum bus along with the original drum signal and gets compressed and all this, then that signal then gets sent to a reverb. So both the delay and the original drum signal gets sent to this reverb. So I'll turn that on and we can hear what that sounds like. Yeah, just makes it sound like it's in a bigger space. The first thing on the reverb channel is Logic stereo delay. The mix is only set to 43%, so there is still quite a bit of straight dry signal getting sent to the reverb, but it does have this little bit of 16th note delay going to the reverb as well, which just kind of gives this cool effect. After that, I'm just filtering off the top end of the signal that's getting sent to the reverb before it hits the reverb. So we can listen to this bypassed and see what difference this is making to the reverb. So I'll start with it on and then I'll turn it off. Yeah, it just helps the reverb to stay kind of like dark sounding, and just helps it to sound a bit more vintage to me. For the reverb itself, I'm using Soundtoys Little Plate, which is about as simple as it gets for a reverb, really. The decay time is set to just under 2 seconds, and that's about it. No pre-delay or anything like that. This delay here is sort of acting like a little bit of a pre-delay, but it's also, like I said, it's not set to 100% mix, so there is still some of the original drum signal getting sent to the reverb that's not delayed, if that makes sense. And then after the reverb, just adding a little bit more mid-range so we can hear what this is doing. I will start with it on, and then I'll bypass it and switch it in and out. And for me, that's just turning up the reverb in all the right areas, which is it's really bringing it out in that mid-range area that helps the reverb to be heard. But it's not muddy. It's not clogging up this low mid or low frequency area here. So yeah, I think that was an important move on the reverb channel. And then so the drum bus and the reverb both get sent to this music bus, and I'll just show you here. So that music bus there's nothing on that. That gets sent to the mix bus, which is here. Nothing on that except for this, which is doing nothing. I don't know why I didn't just turn that off. This is just my template. I just kind of forgot. And then Pro L2, which again isn't doing anything apart from turning up the gain. But if I play it, you'll see there's no limiting actually happening here. So that's pretty much the whole mix. One more thing I wanted to quickly show you is that I actually, if you know Logic here, you can see I've actually got this in flex mode, and the reason for that is I am tuning this down 33. I believe this is cents, so 33 cents. I just found that the original snare drum was a little bit too high pitched sounding when I was comparing it to the original recording. So yeah, I just turned it down, and we can hear the difference here. So this is the original. So this is not tuned down. And then tuned down. Yeah, it just fattened up the snare drum a little bit for me, and just kind of put it closer to where the original Led Zeppelin recording was. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So thank you so much for checking it out. Thank you so much again to Eric for having me on here, and for doing this mix contest, and for everything that you do for the audio community. It truly is an honor, and I am super grateful to be sharing this with you. So thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Aussie, for taking the time to do that and sharing all this with us. A few things that struck me after watching this video. Again, headphone stuff. I'm going to check out Can Opener. The headphone thing's become more important for me now that I'm working in this space, with a pair of, Atom A7Xs in here. So I'm very curious to experiment with that. A lot of people have been talking about headphone processing, either plugins or devices or whatever, that try and give headphones more the quality of listening on speakers. I've been skeptical. Early ones that I tried were like, nah, I'll just stick with what headphones sound like. I'm used to what headphones sound like, and it's never really bothered me. But yeah, I want to revisit that. There's a lot of people that are talking about how important this is, and Aussie was able to do this, on the run. He's, not even in his studio, and just did this all in the box with his headphones. So, so then the soft tube tape plugin. I think I did download and try that, but I'm gonna revisit that one. And the choice to do 3 3/4 IPS that is an extreme choice, and I think maybe being my experience with using real tape machines, 3 3/4 IPS sounds wildly lo-fi on a real tape machine, in my experience. And the example that was given with the plugin doesn't sound nearly as extreme as what I'm used to, but it's still at a cool quality. And I think it captured something that was important about the original, that there is a thickness of saturation just in the high end on that original recording that when I was doing, my MM1200 at 30 IPS didn't really capture. I had rented Interview. This was a long time ago, so before the internet and everybody's on here telling about how they do everything. I had read a magazine interview with Led Zeppelin. My obsession with Led Zeppelin goes way back. So this was probably maybe in the 80s, where I was just desperate to figure out anything I could about how this stuff was recorded. I've always been obsessed with it. And in this interview, he was asked, do you use noise reduction? And Jimmy Page responded and said, I never use noise reduction. It's always 30 IPS, no noise reduction. That's what we do. And so I just presumed, from that point on, I was like, okay, that's what Led Zeppelin does. But, this was an interview that was done in the 80s. And so he may have been talking about what had been done in the last maybe 10 years or something, but not in the last 15 years or 20 years, because Jimmy Page had a very long career recording, and so I don't know for sure that response really reaches all the way back to Zeppelin 1, 2, 3, 4 that were done in the late 60s, early 70s, like Zeppelin 4 was done in 1971. And I'm not certain about the history of this, but I think it probably would have been more common to be recording at 15 IPS at that time. And so then also the EQ standard comes into play, IEC versus NAB, which was a factor when you're anything other than 30 IPS. By the time they got to 30 IPS, everybody agreed on one EQ standard. But slower than that, you had two different EQ curves to contend with, and so my guess is that this was possibly done at 15 IPS. The high end kind of feels like that, sort of in hindsight. That's what it sounds like. And this choice on that soft tube tape plugin, I think, reflected that. I think it was a good choice. Aussie made an interesting choice with the pitch. He used Logic to pitch down my recording a little bit, and there's been a huge debate about whether this recording was slowed down or not. And I'm going to do another follow-up. The last follow-up number 3. There was another huge round of great information that came out. I'm going to do another one, and I want to talk about that more in more detail, because I think I'm starting to land on an opinion about what I think probably happened, but I think it was a good choice to slow this down a little bit. And I remember when I was tuning that snare drum, I think I talked about it in the original video, the drum tuning was really difficult. The snare drum was so aggravating, because I would get something that I felt like was there, I'd play on it for a bit, it would change, and then I couldn't get it back. It was super frustrating. And so when I got it, like, okay, it's doing the one overtone that I really think is important, this high G in there, it was a little sharp, but I didn't want to touch it. I was like, this is close enough, it's ringing in the right way. I got to just do this. If I'm afraid if I tune this down at all, it's going to go away and I'll lose it. And so I went with that. And so even when I recorded this, I knew that where I had tuned the drum was a tiny bit sharp, would potentially offer the opportunity to pitch it down. The timing would be off then, but he, Aussie used a pitch shift that accommodated that, that shifted the pitch without changing the timing. So I think that was a good choice and did actually bring it a little closer. So that's something I'm going to experiment with on a future round of this. So there it is. There's the winners. And again, thank you everybody for diving down this rabbit hole. It's just been so fun. It's such an endless supply of interesting, fun stuff. And I've learned so much. It's been super inspiring, and it definitely inspired me to do another round of this. I hope this never ends. It's just too fun. So all right. Hopefully there's some useful stuff in there. Again, thank you for the contest winners for sharing all of your, experience and knowledge and techniques with everybody. It's really, really valuable for all of us. They're certainly valuable for me. Always inspires new stuff for me. And I will see you all on the next one. All right. Bye.